Hey Chaos crew, Jimmy Chaos here, back with the black cards from Streets of New Capenna for my set review, mainly focusing on limited, but speaking about constructed here and there if I see a card that feels like it could go into some kind of constructed deck. So far we've looked at the green, the blue, and the white cards, so after this video, go check those out as well. So let's get going here. So first up is the Angel of Suffering, 3 and 2 black for a Nightmare Angel 5/3. That is flying, and if damage would be dealt to you, prevent that damage and mill twice that many cards. And this is a mythic. So in terms of limited, this puts your opponent on a pretty fast clock, but it also kind of speeds up your clock as well. Since you only have a 40 card deck, by turn 5 you've drawn at least 12 cards, leaving you with 28 in your deck. So this effectively puts you at 28, and creatures your opponent, or damage from your opponent, is doubled. Effectively putting you at 14 life when you look at it that kind of way. Which, yeah, this kind of is a risk, but the 5/3 flying can get in for a lot of damage. It's 4 turn clock if your opponent's still at 20. So this is a bit of a risky card, but I think there is a place for this in any limited black deck. Again, just the 5/3 is a really big threat, and with black you have removal to keep the way clear, so this can get in quickly. In terms of constructed, yeah, I'm sure some EDH players can do some crazy things with this. Maybe we'll see some experimentation in some kind of standard angel deck where they have some kind of graveyard synergy. But other than that, I don't think this would see much constructed play. All right, next we have the Body Launderer, 2 and 2 black for an Ogre Rogue, the 3/3. It has Death Touch, and whenever another non-token creature you control dies, Body Launderer connives. When Body Launderer dies, return another target non-rogue creature card with equal or lesser power from your graveyard to the battlefield. Alright, it's also a mythic, so a few things to break down here. So it's 4 mana, 3/3 with Death Touch, which is an okay rate, not great. But whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you get to draw a card and discard one. And if you discard a non-land, this guy gets +1/+1 counter. And when it dies, return another creature with equal or lesser power from graveyard to the battlefield. See, unlimited, this is a bomb. Like, you're gonna get a lot of value, and when it does die, you get something back from the graveyard. So that's even more powerful. So yeah, this is a great limited card. Absolutely, you'd want to play this. In terms of constructed, if there's a mono black kind of tempo deck, this would be good in that. It keeps your stuff on the board. Sorry, gets your stuff back on the board when it dies, and it helps you draw and get rid of the cards you don't need. So, yes, great card. Cemetery Tampering, 2 and a black for an enchantment, rare with Hideaway 5. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may mill 3 cards. Then, if there are 20 or more cards in your graveyard, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. Okay, so the milling in limited is a bit risky because limited, there doesn't seem to be a lot of graveyard synergy in this set, so milling cards is kind of just getting them out of the game, and doing that just to get one spell for free down the road that you saw in the top 5 cards of your deck on turn 3 seems a bit risky. I don't think this is a card that you'd really want to play in limited. I think the milling would just end up possibly running you out of cards and therefore losing the game. In terms of constructed, though, any kind of graveyard deck in EDH is going to love this card. We could see this card with some play in standard if there's some kind of graveyard shenanigans type deck. I don't think Dredge in Modern would like this. It's a bit too slow with that 3 mana, I would think. But possibly, we might see some people kind of experiment with that. So overall limited, I wouldn't recommend playing this. All right, next, Corrupt Court Official, 1 and a black for a 1/1. And when Corrupt Court Official enters the battlefield, target opponent discards a card. Okay, so we've seen this effect on many different cards throughout various sets. The previous one had the Virus Beetle, I believe it was called. We've seen this on rats, I think Ravenous Rats specifically. That might be a different card. Anyways, so it's a fairly common effect we see in limited, and it's usually half decent. It's not always the most powerful, like especially late game when your opponent has nothing in their hand. But early game, it can really mess them up. To knock out one of their later plays that they wanted to save, or if they get a bit greedy and discard a land, they could end up short on a land at some point. So overall, this is an average limited card. In terms of constructed, I don't think this would see much play. A Crooked Custodian, 1 and a black for a 3/2, so that's above rate. An Ogre Rogue, and enters the battlefield tapped. Yeah, playing this on turn 2, it being tapped is kind of irrelevant because your opponent, if they went first, they have a 2-drop of their own. You may not want to trade. And if you went first, they're going to play a 1-drop. This would outclass that. So yeah, this doesn't really have much of a downside. So a 2-mana 3/2 is above rate. So yeah, I would say this is above average playable in limited. Cut of the Prophets. X and 2 black for a sorcery. It's a rare with casualty 3. And you draw X cards and lose X life. Alright, yeah, this is pretty good for limited. Pretty strong card. Like, drawing as much cards as you can afford to lose life. Yeah, that's powerful. And if you sack a creature, you copy it. So you have to be a little bit careful and make sure you don't pay half your life. Or else you're just going to die. But yeah, no, this is a great card. Definitely in standard, we could see play if there's any kind of black-based control deck. This would just help refill their hands. The casualty wouldn't really matter so much. Or again, in a black tempo type deck. Yeah, overall, pretty good card. Throat Contender. 1 black for a 1/1. And you can pay 1 life to give it +1/+0 until end of turn, and you can only activate that once a turn. Alright, they had to put the activate once a turn, otherwise this would be like a turn 2 swing for 20 card, so it's totally reasonable that they limited it in that way. But a 1-mana 2/1 is above rate, that's Savannah Lions. You have to pay the life, so it's not truly the same, so it's a little bit less than Savannah Lions. But yeah, I would say this is playable in limited. Definitely not in constructed. I don't even think vampires would really want this. Like, there's far better 1-drop vampires out there. But in terms of limited, yeah, it's about average, I would say. Deal Gone Bad. 3 and a black for an instant. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn, and target player mills 3 cards. Okay, yeah, that's pretty good. Normally for black removal, it's double black. This is just single black, so it's nice and easy to cast in a deck that's more than 1 color and limited. -3/-3 is usually enough to get the job done, or to finish something off after combat, or just to weaken it so your creature survives and theirs dies. And you can also mill them for 3, and if they're not a deck that gets stuff back from the graveyard or takes advantage of that in any way, you're basically removing 3 cards from the game from them. And in limited, that matters a lot more than in, say, constructed. This definitely wouldn't see anything in constructed. There's far better removal, but in terms of limited, yeah, this is a solid piece of removal. I'd say above average. Demon's Due. 3 and a black for an instant. Scry 2, then draw 2, and you lose 2 life. Yeah, we've seen this kind of pay 4 mana, you draw 2 cards, you lose some life effect. Sometimes you look at the top 3 and pick the 2. This you're essentially looking at the top 4 potentially, like if you scry 2 to the bottom and grab the next 2. So it's not quite the same as looking at the top 3, though it potentially is a little bit better most of the time. If you see 2 cards that you like, then you're good anyway. So yeah, this is a pretty average limited card. I would say you'd probably play 1. You probably wouldn't want to play the second one because this could clog up your hand, especially in the early game. So this is more for the mid game. So yeah, overall, average card. Dig Up the Body. 2 and a black for an instant with casualty 1. Mill 2 cards, then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, so this kind of effect for 3 mana, we usually can get... Sometimes we can get 2 creatures. 1 creature isn't too bad, and also we have casualty 1 here, so we do have the option of sacrificing something small to get a second creature. So overall, I'd say this is pretty much average. Milling the 2 isn't too much of a downside, especially because you're just going to grab the best creature back from your bin anyways. So yeah, overall, an average playable limited card. I would only probably play 1. I don't think you'd ever want to run a second copy. Dusk Mangler. 5 and 2 black for a horror, 5/4. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, discard a card, or pay 4 life. When Dusk Mangler enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature, discards a card, or loses 4 life. Okay, so you have one of the downsides. Your opponent has all 3 of them. 7 mana for 5/4 is a bit below rate, but making them discard a card, sack a creature, or lose 4 life, that's not too bad. Those are all they lose all of those. So yeah, they lose 2 cards and they lose 4 life. Yeah, no, this seems pretty strong. And you can pay the 4 life if you have it to spare. You could discard a card or sack a creature, so it's nice and flexible on your end. So yeah, I would say this is maybe a slightly above average card for limited, and that 4 points could be what you need to break a stalemate and just kill them outright. So yeah, overall, it's a pretty neat card. Looking forward to seeing how this one ends up playing out. Extract the Truth. 1 and a black for sorcery. Choose 1. Target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a creature, enchantment, or planeswalker card. That player discards that card. Target opponent sacrifices an enchantment. Alright, black struggles with enchantment removal, and this kinda helps. Not as good as, say, Feed the Swarm, where you can target which enchantment, but this is good to see in black. Special Limited. Constructed could see play with this if black really needs enchantment and removal in an environment, so I'm thinking maybe EDH. This wouldn't be too bad. And also, the other mode, in limited, it's okay. 2 mana discard a card isn't bad, but it's usually a little bit slow because you're not adding to the board and you're on your side. But the sacrifice, I think maybe because of that, you could justify running one of these in Premier Draft in Best of 1. In traditional draft, you would want to relegate this to the sideboard, and if your opponent has a lot of enchantments or one big enchantment you need to worry about, then this is when you would want to bring that in. So overall, I would say it's average, slightly below average for limited. Fake Your Own Death. 1 and a black for an instant. Until the end of turn, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains. When this creature dies, return to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control, and you create a treasure token. Yeah, we've seen similar effects, and they always end up being kind of mediocre and limited. Saving one of your mediocre creatures for a card is rarely worth it. Getting a treasure is not really enough to make it worth it either. So yeah, overall this card's kind of mediocre. Though I do like the artwork quite a bit. That's pretty neat concept. So yeah, overall not really playable, unfortunately. Girder Goons, 4 and a black for a 4/4 Ogre Warrior. When Girder Goons dies, create a tapped 2/2 black rogue creature token, and it blitzes for 3 and a black. Okay, so 5 mana 4/4 is a bit below rate, but when it dies, you do get the 2/2 in return, so that's pretty good. And if you blitz it, you get that 2/2, and then you get to draw another card. So overall, I'd say you get a fair bit of value for this creature, regardless if you blitz it or if you play it normally. So I'd say it's slightly above average, playable and limited. Yeah, constructed, this is not a card constructed would ever use. Graveyard Shift, 4 and a black for sorcery. This spell has flash as long as there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay, so the typical 5 mana resurrect a creature from your graveyard spell we see in black. This one it'll have flash though is pretty neat. We haven't seen that before, I don't believe. So that's really kind of interesting and something we'll have to make sure we play around in limited, because this card would definitely be worth playing. And our opponents are going to play it. So we have to keep an eye on their graveyard. So it's 5 or more mana values. So if they have a land, a couple of creatures, an instant or sorcery, they could get to that fairly easily. And then all of a sudden they have a instant speed resurrection spell, which can be absolutely devastating. So yeah, no, this card seems like maybe slightly above average compared to the normal versions of this we've seen in the past. So pretty cool. Grizzly Sigil. For 1 black, it's a sorcery with casualty 1. So choose target creature or planeswalker. If it was dealt non-combat damage this turn, Grizzly Sigil deals 3 damage to it and you gain 3 life. Otherwise, Grizzly Sigil deals 1 damage to it and you gain 1 life. So basically, you have to sacrifice the creature or this spell is pretty bad. Just doing the 1 damage is likely not going to kill most things, unless you're just killing a early drop. But if you sacrifice one of your early drops, this does 4 damage to a target, plus you gain 4 life. All for 1 mana and a creature. That's pretty strong. This definitely seems like it's above average. And yeah, I would play it. I don't know if you'd want to run 2 because of the sacrifice. Possibly. But yeah, otherwise... yeah, above average playable card. Illicit Shipment, 3 and 2 black, sorcery, casualty 3, search your library for a card, put in your hand, then shuffle. Okay, so 5 mana demonic tutor that you can copy if you sacrifice 3. In limited, you're not likely to have 2 cards in your deck that you care that much about, and 5 mana for a tutor is a fair bit to pay. So this card seems, yeah, this doesn't seem very good. It seems quite a bit above rate and just not very strong overall. Yeah, normally searching a library for any card is 4 mana. Unless, of course, we're talking about Demonic Tutor, which is undercosted. And the casualty, I don't think that really justifies the extra cost because you're already sacrificing a creature. So yeah, overall, this card just seems kind of mediocre, slightly below average. Incriminate. 1 and a black for a sorcery. Choose 2 target creatures controlled by the same player. That player sacrifices 1 of them. Okay, well that's kind of interesting. It's sort of like an edict effect, except you get to choose which of their creatures they can choose from. So obviously you choose their best 2 creatures, and then they have to get rid of 1 of them. They only have 2 creatures. One's really good, one's really bad. This card's value is a lot worse. It is a sorcery as well instead of an instant like some edict effects. So I would say it's probably average overall. Probably worth playing. Definitely, I don't think you'd want more than 1 copy. Just seems a little slow, doesn't add to the board, and they can always just choose the worst of the 2. So overall, average card, just play 1. Join the Maestros, 4 and a black for a sorcery with casualty 2. Create a 4/3 black ogre warrior creature token. Interesting, a spell that just straight up creates a token in black. Normally that's a green thing to do, so it's kind of interesting to see a bit of a diversion from the color pie here. So for 5 mana you get a 4/3, which is not very good. So you would want to definitely be sacrificing the 2 power or greater creature, and then you get 2 4/3s for 5, which is okay. So I would say this card is really just kind of average. It's not amazing. It's playable, but just average. Maestro's Initiate, 2 and a black for a 3/1 human citizen, and for 4 and either a blue or a red, you can exile Maestro Initiate from the graveyard. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Okay, I like that you can do something with this after it dies. A 3 mana 3/1 is a bit above rate. Normally that's 2 mana for a 3/1, but they're giving the extra cost because of the graveyard effect. This is also a card you don't mind discarding to connive because it has some pretty decent value in the graveyard. It's actually better value in your graveyard. And it's something to do with your mana late in the game. Maybe you're a bit flooded out. This helps you just draw through that and get to the good stuff. Yes, overall I'd say this is probably an average playable card in a blue-black or a blue-black or a red-black deck. Otherwise, if you're not playing blue or red, this card is just really bad and you would not want this at all. Midnight Assassin, a 2 for 2 and a black, a 1/2 flying death touch. Okay, so that's a bit expensive, but flying and death touch are 2 pretty powerful keywords in limited. So I think you can justify playing this because, yeah, it blocks anything in the air, which can be difficult. And if they don't have flying, it just gets in for a point of damage every turn, or it can, again, still block things on the ground if need be. 3 mana is it's a little bit much to pay for a 1/2, but I think the flying and death touch kind of make it worth it. So overall, I'd say it's probably just an average, maybe slightly below average card, but it still seems a bit playable. Murder. All right, this has been reprinted to death. Pun intended. 1 and 2 black for an instant, destroy target creature. Yeah, this just straight up hard removal for 3 mana. This is great. Absolutely, you would play multiple copies of this card. Yeah, it's murder. Not much to say about it. Play it. Nightclubber, 1 and 2 black for human warrior 2/2. When Nightclubber enters the battlefield, creatures your opponent control get -1/-1 until end of turn. And it has Blitz for 2 and a black. So that's interesting that the Blitz cost is basically the same as the normal casting cost. They're both 3 mana in total. So that's kind of cool. We haven't seen that yet. And when it enters the battlefield, all your opponent's creatures get -1/-1. Yeah, that's pretty good. Make their whole board weaker, maybe even kill off some of their creatures, especially if they're on green-white and have a lot of the citizens tokens. Yeah, this is actually a very strong limited card, I would say. Yeah, yeah, I would play multiple copies and be happy about it every time. And if you have to blitz it, that's not a bad thing either, because it's almost like a removal spell at that point, and then you get to draw another card. Yeah, this is actually I would say this is well above average. All right, Raffine's Silencer, 2 and a black for a 1/1 human assassin. Okay, we're not off to a good start. When Raffine's Silencer enters the battlefield, it connives. Okay, so it's potentially a 3-mana 2/2, still not great. When Raffine's Silencer dies, target creature an opponent controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is Raffine's power. Okay, so if you get the +1/+1 counter and it dies, it gives something -2/2. So it trades pretty well, and it can trade up pretty well as well in that case. If you don't get the connive +1/+1 though, it loses a lot of value. It just trades with something with 2 toughness, which for 3 mana that's below right. So you definitely want to be able to get the connive trigger. And at 3 mana, that should be pretty easy to do. It's early enough in the game that you should still have non-land cards in your hand. Late in the game, it could be a little dicey, so you may not be the happiest to play it late in the game, but what 3 mana spell are you really ever happy to play late in the game? So overall, I would say this is probably slightly above average. You can trade up most of the time. Reveler Runer, 3 and a black for a Cephalid Rogue 3/1 as Menace. When Reveler Runer enters the battlefield, it connives. Okay, so if you get the connives trigger, it's a 4 mana 4/2 with Menace. That does make it rather difficult to block. They're probably gonna have to trade 2 of their earlier drops for it, which isn't bad, helps you keep the board under control. Yeah, I'd say overall this is just an average card. It's not amazing, and if you don't hit the connives trigger, it's really kind of rough. So yeah, maybe just average, maybe slightly below average. Rogue's Gallery, 2 and a black for sorcery. For each color, return up to 1 target creature card of that color from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, so this could very easily be 3 mana, return 2 creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. If you're in a 3-color deck, this becomes 3 mana, return 3 creatures from your graveyard to your hand. So yeah, in the right deck, this card is pretty good. We normally see 3 mana getting 2 creatures back, so this being able to get 3 potentially, or if you're an absolute mad lad and playing 5 colors unlimited, you could get 5 creatures back. Yeah, that's a very high ceiling. So most of the time you're going to get 2 or 3. So yeah, I would say this is slightly above average, because again, normally 3 mana only gets us 2, and this one gets us 3. So yeah, slightly above average, and pretty cool artwork too. Sanguine Spy, 2 and a black for a 2/3 vampire rogue. It's a rare, has Menace and Lifelink. 1 in mana, sacrifice another creature. Look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. At the beginning of your end step, if there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. Okay, so 3 mana, 2/3 Menace, Lifelink. It's a pretty decent rate. Being able to sacrifice another creature to kind of have a surveil effect is also pretty cool. Something's going to get killed, and you sacrifice it anyways, and then maybe get a land out of your way. Get a card you can't cast for 4 turns out of your way, that kind of stuff. So that's pretty good. And if at your end step you have 5 cards with 5 or more mana values, 5 or more different mana values in your graveyard, which you've helped fuel with the second ability, you can pay 2 life to draw a card. I'm glad that it's a may trigger and not a must trigger, or else this card would be kind of risky at times. But then again, it does have lifelink, so it helps you pay for that 2 life. So yeah, that's a pretty good effect as well. So overall, this is a pretty darn strong card in limited, I would say. It's great card filtering, good card advantage. It's hard to block, gains you life. So yeah, this is a bomb in limited almost, I would say. In terms of constructed, yeah, this could see some constructed play in some of the graveyard-centric decks in Standard. Possibly even Historic. Maybe Historic considers this for... No, I wouldn't consider it for a Rogue deck. They use Lurrus. They can't play it in a Lurrus deck. But yeah, overall, I think we might see some play in Standard. Vampire EDH decks maybe would want something like this. If you play a Vampire EDH deck, let me know down in the comments. Shadow of Mortality. Okay, this card's pretty cool. 13 and 2 black. That casting cost right there. It's an avatar, it's a rare, it's a 7/7. If your life total is less than your starting life total, this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the difference. So if you happen to be at 7 or less life, this is a 2 mana 7/7. Doesn't have flying, unfortunately, which would be pretty sweet, but you know, a 2 mana 7/7, you can't have everything. But let's think, what's the more realistic case? Let's say you have this on turn 4, you're at 15 life, it would still be 10 mana. Yeah, so you're going to be waiting a while to cast this, but when you do, like, it's an absolute powerhouse, like 7/7 and limited. Yeah, that's going to be hard to deal with. Your opponent basically needs removal, or they're going to have to probably trade 3 for 1, maybe 2 for 1 if they have some moderate sized creatures. So yeah, in limited, this is a bomb. In terms of constructed, I don't know if a Death Shadow deck would want to play this, because they have Death Shadow, they have the Sky Scourge something or other, the 2 mana thing that is like a Death Shadow. So they already have 2 spells that are kind of like that, but we might see this. Some people might try it out to see if it takes the place of either of those, or maybe they play a 3rd copy of creatures like that in Death Shadow. But yeah, overall in limited, absolute bomb. Shakedown Heavy, 2 and a black for a 6/4 Ogre Warrior who's a rare. It has Menace. Alright, 3 mana 6/4 Menace. This has got to be one heck of a downside for that, right? When Shakedown Heavy attacks, the defending player may have you draw a card. If they do, untap Shakedown Heavy and remove it from combat. That's kind of barely a downside. Like, you're getting a card, and then you're getting your creature untapped and out of combat, which, yeah, okay, maybe you want the damage, maybe you can kill them if you get that damage through. But you get it back to block, and you just get a replacement card. Like, this card is absolutely insane, because there's going to come a time where that card advantage just buries them, and the 6/4 blocks their board, preventing them from hitting you. Yeah, this card is insane. This is absolutely insane and limited. In terms of constructed, yeah, a mono black tempo deck would probably love to play this, help refill their hand. Oh darn, my 6/4 can't get in, but I get a card and I have a really big blocker. Yeah, this card's very strong, very strong. Tavern Swindler, 1 and a black for a 2/2 human rogue. And you can tap it, pay 3 life, flip a coin. If you win the flip, you gain 6 life. Okay, this is not for limited. This is a commander card for all you coin flippers out there. Yeah, no, in limited, this is a 2/2 bear with a potential gamble of an upside. Like, no, you don't want that, because when you care about gaining the 6 life, you can't afford to gamble 3 life. Like, if you're at 20, paying 3, gaining 6, going to 23, you're not really accomplishing a heck of a lot. There are better 2-drops, and 2-drops are not as so important that you absolutely need to have one. So this is just a mediocre card. Tenacious Underdog, 2 mana 3/2. Okay, so right there, that's great, right? It's a human warrior rare. Blitzes for 2 and 2 black and paying 2 life. Okay, that's a pretty hefty blitz cost. And you may cast Tenacious Underdog from your graveyard using its blitz ability. Okay, so you play a 2 mana 3/2 on curve, which is just great. It trades potentially up, and then you can keep bringing it back. In limited, that's really strong. This is, again, another bomb. Black has some really strong cards. It's looking like in limited. And yeah, just being able to replay something over and over, even if it's just a 3/2, just the fact you keep playing it again is really kind of strong. And it's a blitz effect, so it comes, it attacks, deals damage to them, or gets a creature out of the way, or if they have a good blocker, then, well, you don't blitz it necessarily. And then you get to draw another card, so it helps refill your hand. Yeah, this card's pretty cool. It's, yeah, really strong and limited. In terms of constructed, yeah, a black tempo deck may run this. Again, they like being able to reuse things, especially some kind of like hand hate deck, I think. If you're going with like the new Obnixilis and trying to go after the hand, this helps you just have some kind of threat that keeps coming back. Draws you cards so you can keep the pressure on, draw your removal to deal with what they've deployed and stuff. So overall, this could see some constructed play, and yeah, in limited, it's an absolute bomb. All right, Vampire Scrivener, 4 and a black for a 2/2. Oh boy, this better be good. Vampire Warlock, flying. Whenever you gain life during your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Vampire Scrivener. Whenever you lose life during your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Vampire Scrivener. Okay, well this makes that coin flipper look a lot better, because you lose life, you get a +1/+1. You gain the life. If you win the flip and gain the life, you get in a +1/+1. So I guess that's what they were going for, is hey, these two play together nicely. Drawing them together, getting them both on the board alive at the same time, that's another story. Yeah, overall, card's kind of average. We've seen a 5 mana 3/3 flyer that gets +1/+1 counters when you gain life. And that was pretty strong, but that's because clerics had a lot of life gain synergies. Can't remember off the top of my head which set that was. Altheim, maybe? Any rate, and losing life on your turn, there's not a lot of effects, though I guess the Underdog previously you did pay life to get it out of your graveyard, so if you have that card, this could play well with that. So it's going to be very dependent on how much life and you can gain and lose on your turn. Just playing it if you have a bit of life gain seems a little sketchy because it starts off kind of small. So overall, I'd say in the right deck, this might be slightly above average. In the wrong deck, it's going to be below average. And we have Whack, which of course in a gangster themed set, we have to have a Whack. 3 and a black for Sorcery. The spell costs 3 less to cast if it targets a white creature, and target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn. All right, so if it's not a white creature, 4 mana, -4/-4, it's pretty good. Grasp of Darkness is double black for the same effect, and it's an instant, so this is not as good in comparison. But in terms of limited, this is pretty good removal. If there's any kind of indestructible creature, or if they have a shield counter, this gets around that nicely, because the shield counter won't protect from -4/-4, which I should have also mentioned about the -3/-3 removal earlier. So black having minus-based removal instead of damage-based removal or just hard removal is actually kind of relevant. So yeah, in best of one, you would play this. In traditional, you might relegate it to the sideboard, though I could see mainboarding one, keeping the second copy in the sideboard for when you're playing against white. Against white, of course, this is an absolute bomb. Like 1 mana, -4/-4 on a creature, even if it's a sorcery instead of an instant, that's still very, very strong. And yeah, overall, definitely some nice removal we're seeing here. And yep, that is the end of the black cards. So yeah, overall, we saw some really powerful bombs in black there. Like the Underdog was really strong. This Angel, again, seems risky but strong. And yeah, really good removal in this set. Like Murder, -3/-3 removal and with milling, -4/-4 with milling, or not with milling, but -4/-4. So overall, yeah, black looks very strong. So this is going to be a removal heavy format, it's looking like. So liking what I'm seeing. This is looking like it's going to be a very fun format. Yeah, excited to get my hands on it and try it. Pre-release this weekend. All right, well, thank you all for watching. Again, yeah, it's been really fun reviewing these cards. And again, let me know what you think in the comments. Let's kind of try and work together and break the meta. And subscribe to my channel to see the rest of my set reviews. And then, of course, a lot of drafts once new Capenna launches. And thank you again for watching. And until next time, I'll see you in the next one.